morning. I'm Brian Edwards. I'm Carol's son. I was trying to get some things together to talk about Mom. I wanted to include stories, that was stories and experiences that were more than just what me and my dad had experienced, and talked with a few people over the last few days, and I had found out a couple things that I just had never heard. And one thing to start off, all of us could have been very different right now. Mom was born at home out in the country, and she was the first child of my granny. And she was born out in the country, and she was stillborn. I'd never heard that before, and I guess the doctor worked on her a long time. They didn't know if she was going to come around or not. So, but she did. But I never heard that story before. Anyway, my Uncle Randy, her younger brother, had told this to me, and my granny had said after Mom was born, she said, okay, if we ever have any more kids, I don't care what, the very next time we are going to be at a stupid hospital. So that was my granny. But so Mom kind of grew up out in the country here, just outside of Huntsville, and one of her friends, if not her best friend, who lived close to her, was named Lorene, and they kind of grew up together. They were lived very close to each other, lifelong friends. Spent time over at one another's house, and Lorene ended up getting married first, and had her first son, Russell. And before my mom ever met my dad, I guess she would watch Russell with her, and her mother would watch Russell together sometimes to give Lorraine a little bit of a break from it. First-time mother, and it was apparently a lot of work. So, but they were just always there for each other. And then eventually she ended up meeting my dad. Now, there are two versions of this story that I've heard. And one I'll talk about the first one first, which this is probably the accurate version. This was told to me by my Aunt Joanne. But according to her, Mom had a date with Dad's roommate at the time, and didn't really want to go out with him, I guess, is what I'm understanding. But her mom said, oh, he was a nice boy, go out with him, and besides, maybe you'll meet somebody else while you're out and about. Well, she met his roommate, which was my dad, Jim. And when she got home, she told her mom that she thought Jim was very cute. So that's a version I'd never heard. Now, the version I had heard for years and years from Dad. And if you know my dad, he's a little bit of a character. But so he would say the story like this. He was out cruising around Huntsville here with a friend of his, and they saw Mom driving her car with one of her friends cruising around, and he had not seen Mom before, but he thought she was very pretty. He asked his friend if he knew who that was, and I'm sorry, I don't know who the friend was, but the friend said, oh, that's Carol Garrett. And I said, well, you think you can get her attention and let's get her to pull over? I'd like to talk to her. And so they got her attention somehow, and she pulled over the side, and Dad pulled up behind her, got out. over to the driver's side of her car. She rolled down the window, and he just said, it's hard to picture, but you have to imagine my dad's voice. I can't do it, but he just said, "Let's ride." So now that's the version I heard for years and years, and inevitably, every time he told this, she would, when she really laughed hard, she laughed hard. It was just the most beautiful laugh. But she said, "Now, Jim, that's not how it happened, And inevitably, they would just keep laughing, and I never did hear more of the story. So I assumed that was probably what happened because she never did tell me any different. So, but thanks to Joanne, I have another version, and that's probably a little bit more accurate because my dad was a character. So, anyway, however it happened, they hit it off right away, and they were married within just a few short months after that first meeting. I came along within that year after they were married, and she said, when I was born, it was the happiest day of their lives. Mom had decided to be a housewife, and Dad had set his sights on working his way into some kind of good job, good enough to support us and give us everything that he thought we needed. So Dad was the breadwinner and Mom was the homemaker, and I was the beneficiary of all of that. Well, we all were, but I was really kind of focused, being the only child. We moved 2 or 3 times before I was old enough to really remember much about that stuff. And I do know Mom did a lot of the work raising me because Dad was very busy trying to get ahead in his career. So I spent a lot more time with my mom growing up than I did with my dad. He was taking care of us, but she was taking care of me, and from her influence, I got my artistic interest. She loved music and art, and she did not do much of it herself because she was way too busy taking care of us and our family, but she could draw better than any adult that I knew. She didn't do it often, but she did sometimes, and she had the most beautiful and delicate voice I've ever heard. Over the years, as I grew up, I had musical interests and played different instruments. I'd be thumping around on a guitar or playing a piano or something, and she would often make up lyrics and sing along or harmonize with me. She was very good. She had a lovely voice, and I wish I'd taken the time at some point to record it because it really was something to hear. But she only really shared this talent with me. Other people said they had no idea that she sang, so that was really just kind of something between us. She was the best cook. And of course, moms are always the best cooks, but she had to work extra hard with me. I was a very picky eater growing up. And to get me to eat healthy, if I wouldn't eat something, she was very creative about hiding it and other things that I would eat. And if I eventually figured it out or something, she'd figure out some other way to hide it. And she was just amazing at that. And thanks to her, I grew up healthy. And she was ever since she was a kid. I know before she met my dad and before I came along, she was the biggest dog lover. Always had dogs. She had a dog before she married Dad and before I was born. Just always a very motherly type. And every dog, most dogs we had over my life were strays, and they just all loved my mom. And they were also her babies almost as much as I was. And after I was growing up, I got a dog, a beagle named Copper, and it was my dog. The first dog I ever got for myself. But I brought the dog over to visit Mom and Dad one time after I got her, and she instantly became my mom's dog. So this is my dog, but it is now mom's dog. Copper loved her more than anything, and you can see her in lots of pictures with my mom. You know, she'll be sitting there, and the dog is always in her lap. When Mom left home for the last time, Copper just howled and howled for 2 days straight. She knew something was wrong. So. We had a great life together, the three of us. Being an only child, I do admit to some jealousy of my friends and cousins that had brothers and sisters. I'd never really spoken about it with my mom until just a few years ago, and she finally cleared it up for me. Her and Dad wanted very much to give me a little brother or sister, but they couldn't have any more children, and that was one thing that weighed heavy on them. I was a shy kid and didn't make friends easily, and didn't have the toughness a lot of friends I had and cousins, you know, that had brothers and sisters. I didn't have the toughness that you get from having a sibling, or that and these skills that you have with having a sibling. So Mom would spend all her time with me, being my friend, my confidant, and I was her most precious possession in this world. And no matter how bad I felt because of my shyness, she made sure I knew that I was loved. Her and Dad met my wife Holly before I did. She was a good friend is good friends with my cousin Teresa, and Teresa kind of introduced them to Holly, and they really liked her. And I was not looking to date anybody right then, but Mom was really insistent that I call Holly up, and really encouraged that. Well, you know, I did, and about a year later, we were married. And it's not something I ever expected to happen, but it did. And Mom got the greatest daughter-in-law from that. She loved Holly like a daughter, and knew she would look after me. And I think she considered this to be one of her greatest accomplishments. Her and Dad were married for 49 years. We hardly spent a day apart in that time. And when he got sick and passed away, it just broke her heart, as it did all of us. But I think that really contributed more to her decline than anything, because, I mean, it was just about 3 years ago. Holly and I moved in to take care of her when she started really getting sick. But we were no replacement for my dad, and within a couple of years, she was gone. I know she worried if I was going to be okay after she was gone. And I don't know if one can really ever be okay after losing the parents. But I can assure her I'm not alone. I have a great wife, Holly. I have a mother and father-in-law, Wilma and Joel, who have accepted me with open arms. I have a very large extended family, many of them close by and always available. And some lifelong friends that I would trust with my life. My mom could have done anything. She was a great student, and she was like my dad. She was really kind of brilliant with math. Just something I never could do, but they both had the skill. She could have done anything she wanted to. She chose to be a wife and mother first. And I appreciate the personal sacrifices that she must have made for me and Dad. with us, it was always family first and everything else was second or third. I miss everything. I miss her cooking, her singing, that wonderful laugh she had when she was really tickled.